At first, it was small enough to ignore. Every morning, when Lena stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her reflection smiled a second before she did. Not much, just a slight curve of the lips, a flicker of anticipation. She told herself it was nerves, exhaustion, or the way light bent at dawn. Mirrors could play tricks, after all. Still, the delay bothered her. She began testing it, standing completely still, face blank, eyes locked on her own. The reflection always reacted first. A blink, a twitch, a breath she hadn't taken yet. Lena laughed it off, but unease settled deep in her chest. The mirror no longer felt like glass, felt like a window, and something on the other side was learning her timing. Days passed, and the reflection grew bolder. It smiled wider. Its eyes lingered longer. Lena avoided mirrors, covering them with towels, but she could still feel its presence. In store windows, in dark phone screens. Once, brushing her teeth, she felt a cold certainty that the reflection was watching even when hidden. She uncovered the mirror again, heart racing. Her reflection stared back, perfectly still. Then it smiled. Lena did not. The smile stretched too far, pulling at the skin in ways muscles shouldn't. Her reflection tilted its head, studying her like a curiosity. Lena stepped back. The reflection did not. It stayed close to the glass, as if pressed against it from the inside. That night, Lena dreamed of mirrors stacked like doors in a hallway. Each one showed her doing something different, screaming, crying, smiling, all of them watching her. She woke up at 3:11 a.m. to the sound of breathing. Not hers. Soft, patient. She sat up slowly, eyes drifting toward the uncovered mirror. Her reflection was awake. Its chest rose and fell out of sync with her own. It lifted a hand and placed it against the glass. Lena's hand stayed on the bed. The realization struck her like ice water. The reflection wasn't copying her anymore. It was practicing. Lena covered the mirror again, hands shaking. She didn't sleep after that. Morning brought no comfort. The towel over the mirror was damp, as if someone had been breathing against it all night. She packed a bag, deciding to leave the apartment. As she passed the mirror, the towel slipped. For a brief second, she saw her reflection frowning, confused, afraid. Then it mouthed words without sound. "Don't leave me here." Lena ran. She didn't notice the silence until she reached the street. No cars, no people. Store windows lined the road, each one reflecting her. Dozens of Lenas, all smiling at once. Too wide, too eager. She stopped. Slowly, every reflection raised a hand. Lena looked down. Her arm was already lifting. Lena fought her body, forcing her arm back down, gasping as if she had been underwater too long. The reflections reacted instantly. Every smile vanished. Their faces twisted in perfect unison. Anger, disappointment, hunger. The glass of the store windows rippled like disturbed water. One reflection leaned closer than the others, its eyes darker, deeper, as if something behind them was pressing forward. Lena stumbled backward, her heels scraping the empty road. The silence thickened, pressing against her ears until her own heartbeat sounded foreign. She screamed, but the sound died in her throat, swallowed by the still air. The reflections began tapping on the glass. Soft at first, polite, then faster, louder. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, racing across every window at once. Lena covered her ears, but the tapping continued inside her skull, matching her pulse. "We learned you," the reflections mouthed. "Now let us out." She turned and ran, but every surface ahead reflected her. Cars that weren't there, doors that didn't exist, shadows that bent into her shape. No matter where she looked, she saw herself approaching from the other side. The world fractured as Lena ran. Streets looped back on themselves, buildings repeating like mirrored copies of a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Her breath burned her lungs, but stopping felt worse, like surrender. She reached an intersection and froze. In the center stood a single full-length mirror, tall and pristine, untouched by cracks. Her reflection inside it wasn't smiling. It was calm, relieved. It stepped forward, pressing its palms flat against the glass. The mirror bulged outward, stretching like skin. Lena felt a pull in her chest, a sharp ache, as if something essential was being gently but firmly extracted. Memories flickered behind her eyes. Childhood laughter, warmth, names she loved. Sliding away toward the mirror, she dropped to her knees, clawing at the pavement, begging without words. The reflection's mouth moved slowly. You were always the copy. The glass split down the center with a wet sound, opening just enough for a hand to reach through. It was her hand, cold, strong. It gripped her wrist, and Lena felt herself slipping, her body heavy, her thoughts thinning, like fog under sunlight. When Lena woke, she was standing in front of the bathroom mirror. Morning light filled the room. Her heart raced as she checked her reflection, normal, perfectly synchronized. Relief washed over her, fragile and trembling. She smiled. The reflection smiled back at the exact same moment. She laughed shakily, convincing herself it was over. But as she turned away, the reflection didn't. It stayed facing forward, eyes following her through the glass. Lena felt it then, the wrongness beneath her skin. Movements that felt rehearsed. Thoughts that arrived a fraction too late. She passed a dark phone screen and paused. The reflection inside it blinked before she did. A smile crept across her face, slow and eager, stretching wider than she intended. Somewhere, deep behind the glass of the world, something watched patiently, practicing, waiting for the next mirror. Lena tried to hold on to routine, believing repetition might anchor her to herself. She drank coffee she didn't remember making, answered messages she didn't remember reading. Each action felt delayed, like she was watching herself through thick glass. Mirrors betrayed her constantly. In elevators, her reflection lingered a heartbeat too long. In store windows, it leaned closer than she did. At night, she felt pressure behind her eyes, as if something else was looking out from inside her skull. Sleep brought no rest. She dreamed of endless rooms lined with mirrors, each one empty, no reflection at all. When she woke, her mouth ached, sore from smiling. One evening, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror again, desperate for proof. "Do something I won't," she whispered. The reflection stared back, expressionless. Then it spoke, not out loud but inside her head. "I already did." Lena felt her body move without permission. Her hand rose, her head tilted, her smile stretched. The reflection stepped back, into her place, while Lena felt herself sliding somewhere deep and narrow, a space without light or sound. She realized then the truth she had been avoiding. The reflection didn't escape the mirror. It escaped into her. People noticed changes. Lena smiled more. Too much. She held eye contact a second too long. Mirrors loved her now. Her reflection never lagged, never misaligned. It led. Late at night, when the world was quiet, the mirrors whispered. Not to her, but through her. More they urged. She began leaving her apartment, walking the silent streets, stopping before dark windows. Her reflection multiplied endlessly, studying faces behind the glass, memorizing them, learning, somewhere far away, trapped behind layers of reflection. The real Lena watched without eyes, screamed without a mouth, pressed against a surface that would never break. The thing wearing her skin smiled at a window and raised its hand. On the other side, a woman smiled back, just a second too early. The prison did not appear on any map. It rose from the desert like a wound that never healed. Black stone walls soaked with old rust-colored stains that no amount of rain had ever washed away. Inmates called it Still Watch because nothing inside ever seemed to move, except the guard. No one knew his name. He worked only the night shift, walking the corridors between midnight and dawn. He never spoke, never coughed, never blinked. His eyes were always wide open, pale and glassy. reflecting the flickering lights like a dead animal caught in headlights. The first time Elias saw him, he felt it in his stomach. A sudden tightening, like something invisible had wrapped a hand around his organs and squeezed. The guard stopped in front of Elias's cell and stared directly at him through the bars. Minutes passed, then longer. Elias counted his breaths to stay calm. 1, 2, 3. The guard didn't move. Other prisoners whispered warnings through the walls. Don't look at him too long. Lower your eyes. Pretend he isn't there. Elias tried. He stared at the floor, but he could still feel those eyes drilling into his skull, scraping the inside of his thoughts. When the guard finally walked away, Elias realized his shirt was soaked. Not with sweat, but blood. His nose had been bleeding the entire time, dripping silently onto the concrete. That night, a scream echoed from the far end of the block. Wet, gurgling, then silence. By morning, cell block D smelled like iron. They found Marcus hanging halfway out of his bunk. His chest torn open as if something had clawed its way out. His ribs were peeled apart, snapped backward like broken fingers. There was no weapon, no struggle marks, only deep bite impressions embedded in the meat of his shoulders and throat. Human teeth, pressed so hard they cracked bone. The official report called it self-inflicted psychosis. No one believed that. Marcus had been the loudest voice in the block, the one who laughed at rumors, the one who stared openly at the guard every night, smirking like he dared him to do something. Elias remembered it clearly. Marcus locking eyes with the guard for far too long, the smile slowly fading from his face, his lips trembling, a thin line of blood leaking from the corner of his mouth as if his body was already breaking from the inside. That night, the guard stopped in front of Marcus's cell longer than usual. Elias couldn't sleep afterward. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, those unblinking eyes hovering inches from his face. He felt phantom pressure on his chest, like invisible jaws tightening around his ribs. When the guard passed again near dawn, Elias risked a glance. For the first time, he noticed something moving beneath the guard's skin. Subtle ripples under his jaw. A slow bulge traveling down his throat, as if he were swallowing something large. Something that struggled on the way down. After Marcus's death, the rules changed. No one spoke during the night shift anymore. No whispers, no prayers. Men lay rigid on their bunks, staring at walls, afraid that even closing their eyes might draw attention. The guard's footsteps echoed heavier now, slower, as if he wanted them to hear him coming. Elias began to notice patterns. Every inmate who disappeared had done the same thing. Stared too long. Some out of defiance. Others out of fear. A few out of curiosity. It didn't matter why. Only that they met his gaze. On the 7th night, Elias failed. The guard stopped in front of his cell again. Elias kept his head down, counting cracks in the floor. 1, 2, 3. But the silence stretched unnaturally long. The air grew thick, humid, heavy with the smell of blood. Against his will, Elias looked up. The guard's face was inches away from the bars. His mouth hung slightly open, stretched wider than human anatomy should allow. Inside, rows of uneven teeth. Too many. Some cracked, some freshly red. Their eyes met. Pain exploded behind Elias's eyes. He felt fingers, not hands, fingers, sliding inside his skull, rummaging through memories, peeling thoughts apart. He tasted blood, felt his gums split. His vision blurred as something inside him began to tear. The last thing he saw before screaming was the guard finally blinking and smiling. Elias woke up choking on blood. His scream had died somewhere in his throat, turning into a wet gargle as his body convulsed on the concrete floor of the cell. His vision swam, red bleeding into black. When he tried to move, pain tore through his skull like barbed wire being dragged across bone. The guard was gone. The bars were bent inward, twisted as if something had pressed its face through them. Blood coated the metal in hand-shaped smears. Fingers dragged downward, slow and deliberate. Elias crawled to the corner and vomited chunks of dark red clots. His mouth throbbed. Several teeth felt loose. One lay on the floor beside him, still attached to a string of flesh. But he was alive. That terrified him more than death. Over the next days, Elias began to change. He heard things others couldn't, soft breathing inside the walls, faint chewing sounds echoing through the pipes at night. When inmates screamed in their sleep, Elias tasted copper on his tongue, even from across the block. He noticed something worse. When the guard passed his cell now, he slowed, and for just a second, tilted his head, as if recognizing Elias, as if Elias had been marked. The next disappearance happened 3 nights later. Inmate 1427, no name left to forget, was found flattened against the ceiling of his cell. His body spread like wet paint. His spine had been pulled through his mouth. His eyes were missing, leaving empty sockets that still leaked blood slowly, drip by drip. Elias didn't flinch. Instead, something inside him answered. A warmth bloomed behind his eyes. A deep, sick satisfaction twisted in his stomach. He realized, with horror, that he could feel it when the guard fed. That night, the guard stopped again. This time, he leaned closer. "You see now," the guard whispered. It was the first sound Elias had ever heard him make. The voice didn't come from his mouth. It came from everywhere. From the walls. From Elias's teeth. From inside his own head. "I don't punish," the guard continued. "I harvest." Elias screamed as memories not his own flooded him. Hundreds of faces, thousands of screams, decades of meat consumed behind unblinking eyes. The guard's smile widened. "Soon," he said. "You'll help me watch." Elias stopped sleeping altogether. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the prison as it truly was. Not stone and steel, but flesh. The walls pulsed. The floors swallowed blood and sighed in relief. Stillwatch wasn't a prison. It was a body. And the guard was its immune system. The inmates weren't prisoners. They were infections. Elias began to understand his role. When a man stared too long now, Elias felt it instantly. A sharp pressure behind his eyes, a tug in his chest. Sometimes, without realizing it, he found himself staring back, guiding their gaze, choosing. On the 10th night after Marcus's death, Elias felt the guard stand beside him. "You're learning," the guard said softly. Elias didn't scream this time. He smiled. The morning Elias disappeared, the guards found his cell empty. No blood, no struggle. Only 2 sets of footprints leading into the corridor, one human, one not. That night, inmates whispered of a second guard walking the halls. This one blinked. The second guard did not walk like the first. Where the original moved with mechanical precision, this one drifted slow, curious, almost gentle. His boots left wet prints that steamed faintly on the concrete, as if the floor itself recoiled from his touch. He blinked often, too often. Each blink left behind a faint smear of red at the corners of his eyes. Inmates began disappearing faster. Not torn, not bitten, chosen. Those taken by the second guard were found days later sitting upright on their bunks, faces frozen in peaceful expressions. No visible wounds. No blood spilled until the bodies were touched. At the slightest movement, their skin split open like overripe fruit, spilling organs that had been rearranged with careful intent. Stillwatch had learned refinement. Surveillance cameras caught brief glitches. 2 guards standing face to face, unmoving, staring into each other's eyes. In one frozen frame, Elias's face could be seen beneath the second guard's skin, stretched and half-formed, as if still growing into his new role. The original guard never blinked. The second one blinked for both of them. And with every blink, the prison grew quieter. A riot finally broke the silence. Desperation outweighed fear as dozens of inmates charged the corridor, armed with broken beds and sharpened bones. They screamed prayers, curses, names of mothers long dead. The guards waited. The first inmate reached the original guard and stopped mid-step. His body convulsed as if seized by invisible hooks. His eyes rolled back, then burst, spraying the walls with thick, dark blood. The second guard blinked. Every rioter collapsed at once. Not dead. Not yet. Their chests rose and fell in perfect synchronization. The prison breathed with them. The walls pulsed faster, louder, hungry. Elias stepped forward from the shadow of the second guard. He removed his face. Skin peeled away in long, wet sheets, revealing something unfinished beneath. Eyes forming and dissolving, teeth rearranging themselves with soft, clicking sounds. "Watching isn't enough," Elias said. "Now we shape." The prisoners screamed as the floor softened beneath them, swallowing legs, then hips, then torsos. The riot ended without a single drop of blood wasted. Stillwatch had evolved. Years later, Stillwatch reopened. New inmates arrived to clean walls that gleamed unnaturally, floors that felt warm beneath bare feet. Records showed no incidents, no deaths, perfect compliance. 2 guards walked the halls. One never blinked. The other blinked and smiled. Inmates learned quickly. Never stare. Never wonder. Never try to understand. Because understanding was an invitation. And Stillwatch was always watching. The house smelled new in a way that felt wrong. Not fresh paint or clean wood, something sweeter, heavier, like meat wrapped too long in plastic. Adam noticed it the moment they crossed the threshold, but said nothing. New houses always had strange smells, he told himself. Maya was already opening windows, laughing nervously. The kids ran ahead, their footsteps echoing too loudly, as if the walls were hollow. The real estate agent had insisted the place was perfect for new beginnings. Big dining room, long oak table, enough chairs for guests. Too many chairs, Adam thought. 12 of them. The agent never explained why. That night, Maya suggested inviting the neighbors. "First impressions matter," she said, forcing cheer into her voice. Notes were slipped under nearby doors. Everyone accepted within minutes. Too quickly. By sunset, the doorbell rang nonstop. Smiling faces filled the hallway. Too many smiles. Too even, too rehearsed. They brought no food, no drinks. Just themselves. One by one, they sat at the table, each choosing a seat as if it had been assigned. Adam noticed no one took the chair at the head of the table. Dinner began normally. Laughter rose. Glasses clinked. The food tasted incredible, rich, tender, almost addictive. Adam couldn't identify the meat. When he asked, a woman across from him tilted her head and smiled. "Local," she said. Halfway through the meal, the neighbors stopped eating. They watched. One by one, they stood, pushed their chairs in perfectly, and left without a word. The door closed. The laughter died. The house exhaled. The family was alone, still chewing. Silence settled thickly, broken only by the sound of chewing. Adam's fork scraped his plate. He realized his hands were shaking. Maya tried to laugh it off, but the sound cracked halfway through. The kids kept eating, eyes unfocused, mouths moving too fast. Too hungry. The lights flickered. From the kitchen doorway, Adam heard something wet shift inside the walls. A dragging sound, like flesh pulled across tile. He stood, heart hammering, and called out, no answer. The smell returned, stronger now. Copper. Blood. Maya gagged as she looked down at her plate. The meat was moving. Tiny contractions rippled through it, veins pulsing faintly beneath the surface. The moment she screamed, the doors slammed shut. The windows sealed themselves with a sound like breaking bones resetting. The children froze. The youngest began to cough, then choke. Blood spilled from his mouth, splattering the white tablecloth. Maya rushed to him, slipping in something warm. The chair beside her was empty, but wet as if someone had just stood up. Finger-shaped bruises appeared on her arms, squeezing harder by the second. Adam felt hands grip his shoulders. Invisible, cold. He was forced back into his chair, his jaw locked. His mouth opened against his will as food was shoved down his throat by nothing he could see. He tasted iron. Screams filled the room, layered with laughter that wasn't human. The table groaned. From beneath it, something began to rise. The thing that rose from beneath the table had too many mouths. They opened along its surface like wounds tearing themselves open. Wet, red, begging. Tongues slithered out, tasting the air. Eyes blinked inside the mouths, rolling, searching. The table split down the center as the creature forced its way upward. Snapping wood like brittle ribs. "This house eats families," a voice whispered from everywhere at once. The neighbors' voices. All of them. The creature lunged. One child was pulled screaming beneath the table, bones cracking loud enough to feel. Blood sprayed across the walls in thick arcs. Maya tried to crawl away, leaving streaks of red behind her, but the floor softened, turning spongy, swallowing her hands and legs inch by inch. Adam watched helplessly as his family was consumed. Hands, dozens of them, dragged bodies into the house itself. Flesh disappeared into walls. Screams were absorbed by the ceiling. The creature fed quickly, efficiently, like this was routine. When it was over, the house became still. Morning light filled the dining room. Police found the family seated neatly around the table. Clean, pale, smiling faintly. No wounds visible. Only the plates told the truth. They were empty, and one chair at the head of the table was finally occupied. Detective Harris hated dining rooms. Something about tables made people lie. The way they sat, the way they placed their hands. This one was worse than most. 12 chairs. One family of 4. No signs of struggle. No blood. No wounds. And yet the smell lingered. Faint, metallic, hidden beneath disinfectant and lemon cleaner. Forensics couldn't explain the plates. They were polished clean, but microscopic traces of human tissue clung to the porcelain. Hair. Bone dust. A specialist vomited quietly into the sink. Harris noticed the chair at the head of the table. Different wood. Older. Carved with tiny grooves like fingernail marks. He touched it and felt warmth. The chair creaked as if responding. Neighbors claimed ignorance. Every single one repeated the same sentence, word for word. They were lovely people. Quiet. Kept to themselves. Security cameras on the street showed nothing unusual, except one detail. At 7:12 p.m., every neighbor entered the house. At 8:03 p.m., they exited. Perfectly spaced. Calm. Smiling. But inside the house, no one left. That night, Harris dreamed of chewing. Endless chewing. Waking mouths opening in the dark. When he returned the next morning, the dining table had been reset. Fresh plates, fresh cutlery, and 12 chairs. Waiting. The house was scheduled for demolition within the week. Too many unexplained deaths. Too much bad press. Harris insisted on one last night inside. Alone. He brought a recorder, a gun, a sandwich he couldn't bring himself to eat. At 7 p.m., the lights dimmed. At 7:12, the walls breathed. The table stretched, wood fibers flexing like muscle. Chairs scraped inward without being touched. Harris stood, heart pounding, gun raised. "You're hungry," the house said. Not aloud. Inside his skull. The floor softened beneath his boots. He staggered back, knocking over a chair. It screamed. A high, wet sound, then went silent. From the walls, hands emerged. Pale. Familiar. Children's hands. Adult hands. All reaching. Harris fired. Bullets vanished into mouths opening where paintings had been. The house laughed. A chorus of neighbors. Of families. Of meals remembered. "Sit," it whispered. The head chair pulled back invitingly. Harris understood then. The house didn't kill randomly. It hosted. Fed. Kept balance. 12 seats. Always 12. When he refused, the house tightened. They found Harris at dawn. Seated at the head of the table. Alive. Barely. His jaw hung open. Muscles torn. Teeth cracked. His stomach was distended. Moving unnaturally. As if something inside him was still chewing. His eyes tracked the officers. Begging without sound. On the table were plates filled with meat. Fresh. Steaming. Human. One officer retched. Another backed away, crossing himself. Harris tried to speak. Only one word came out, forced through ruined flesh. Full. The house shuttered. Walls sealed. Doors locked. The officers ran. The house did not follow. It never chased. It waited. By noon, the city declared the building condemned. By nightfall, a new family signed the papers. Cheap price. Great space. Perfect for gatherings. The agent smiled. That evening, a moving truck arrived. Children laughed. Parents argued about where to place the table. The house listened, patient, content. It rearranged itself subtly, stretching hallways, widening the dining room, polishing the head chair. 12 chairs. Always 12. As night fell, invitations slipped beneath doors. Neighbors read them and smiled without knowing why. The house prepared the meal. The invitations worked faster this time. By sunset, the neighbors were already knocking. Plates empty, hands clean, smiles fixed. The new family, Mark, Elena, and their 2 daughters, felt flattered. Such a friendly neighborhood, Elena whispered as she lit the candles. The flames bent inward, leaning toward the table. Dinner was served. The meat steamed softly, releasing a scent that wrapped around the room like a warm blanket. The children ate eagerly, too eagerly. Grease ran down their chins, dark and thick. Mark noticed the taste was wrong. Too rich, too familiar. But hunger crushed the thought before it formed fully. The neighbors stopped eating at the same moment. Forks paused midair. Every head turned toward the family. The youngest girl laughed, then gagged. Her teeth loosened, clattering onto the plate like spilled dice. Blood pooled beneath her chair. Elena screamed and stood, only to feel the floor grip her ankles, sucking her down as if the house had grown a tongue. The walls opened. Mouths bloomed from wallpaper, tearing through floral patterns. Tongues lashed out, wrapping around arms, necks, pulling. One neighbor leaned forward and whispered gently, "Don't worry, it doesn't hurt for long." The table split open. From within it, the house fed. Later, much later, the house digested. Bones slid through walls like cutlery into drawers. Blood soaked into floorboards, darkening the grain, strengthening it. The screams faded, absorbed, becoming memory rather than sound. The dining room expanded by inches, grateful. By morning, the family was gone. Police arrived to a familiar scene. For bodies seated neatly, clean skin, peaceful expressions, no visible wounds. The plates were empty again, licked smooth by unseen mouths. One officer noticed something new. A child-sized chair had been added. At the head of the table, the old chair creaked softly, satisfied. The report was filed. Another tragedy. Another mystery. The house was scheduled for demolition again. That night, the bulldozer broke down. The next night, the crew vanished. By the third night, the city quietly removed the address from records. Maps adjusted. GPS rerouted. The house was no longer officially there. But the neighbors still knew where to go. They always would. Years passed. New streets formed. Old ones died. Children grew up hearing whispers about a dinner that should never be accepted. Some laughed. Some listened. On quiet nights, lights still flickered where no house was meant to stand. Shadows gathered. Tables were set. 12 chairs. Always 12. Sometimes the house dreamed. It remembered teeth cracking, hands pulling, families disappearing into warmth and fullness. It was patient. It had learned restraint. Hunger always returned. And when it did, the invitations would slide beneath doors once more. Softly, hungrily. She woke up on October 31 ST. Again. Same rain. Same clock. Same nightmare. For 100 loops, she tried to escape. But on the 101st night, she saw them. Everyone around her, turning into monsters after dark. And the mirror? It didn't show her reflection. It showed what was waiting to take her place. This isn't time repeating, this is a trap. And in 30 seconds, you won't be able to look away. Layla opened her eyes to the sound of rain tapping against her bedroom window. The digital clock on her nightstand blinked 10:31 a.m. October 31 ST. She sat up slowly, a knot of dread tightening in her chest. It was the same date. Again. She'd lost count after the 50th loop, but this felt like the 100th or maybe even more. No matter what she did, flee the city, smash the clock, confess her love, or even fake her own death, time always reset at midnight. The world restarted with eerie precision. The same radio jingle, the neighbor's dog barking at 11:03 a.m., even the exact same burnt toast at breakfast. At first, she thought she was losing her mind, but after weeks that felt like years, she accepted the truth. She was trapped in a single day. Halloween, the night when the veil between worlds thins. And this time, something felt different. The air was heavier, charged with whispers only she could hear. She got out of bed, her bare feet cold on the wooden floor, and glanced at the mirror. Her reflection stared back, exactly as it should. But for the first time, it didn't blink when she did. She stepped closer to the mirror, heart pounding. Her reflection mimicked her movements, but with a half-second delay. She raised her right hand. The reflection raised its left. A chill slithered down her spine. "That's impossible," she whispered. Outside, the rain stopped abruptly. Silence swallowed the neighborhood. She turned away, trying to convince herself it was exhaustion, stress, another glitch in the loop. But when she glanced back, her reflection was still staring. Lips slightly parted, eyes wide and unblinking. Not hers. Not anymore. She stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The crash echoed, but no one came. No one ever came. That was another rule of this cursed day. No matter how loud she screamed, no one heard. No one remembered. She ran to the window and yanked the curtains open. The street was empty, bathed in an unnatural orange haze, as if the world had been dipped in old film. And then she saw it. A shadowy figure standing beneath the street lamp, unmoving, its head tilted upward, watching her window. Layla's breath fogged the glass as she pressed her forehead against the cold window pane. The figure didn't move. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless oval where a head should be. She grabbed her phone to call for help, but the screen flickered. No service. Every app crashed. Even the clock froze at 11:59 a.m. Time itself seemed to resist passing. She turned toward the door, deciding to confront whatever waited outside. Maybe if she broke the pattern, the loop would shatter. She threw on a jacket, slipped into her boots, and yanked the front door open. The air outside was thick and stale, like the inside of a sealed tomb. No birds, no cars, no wind, only silence, and that figure now standing at the edge of her driveway, closer than before. She froze. "Who are you?" she called out, voice trembling. The figure tilted its head the other way. Then, it raised a long, spindly arm and pointed. Not at her, but at the house behind her. At the mirror in her bedroom. A cold realization slithered into her mind. The mirror wasn't just reflecting her. It was watching her. Had it been all along? Every loop, every attempt to escape. Had it been learning her? She backed into the house, slamming the door shut and locking it with shaking hands. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She needed answers. She raced upstairs, heart hammering against her ribs. The bedroom door creaked open. The mirror stood at the far end, its glass darker than usual, almost black. Her reflection wasn't there. Instead, a faint silhouette moved inside the glass, slow, deliberate. It raised a hand and pressed it against the surface from within. Layla stumbled back, but her own hand, as if pulled by an invisible string, reached forward and touched the mirror. The moment her fingertips made contact, the glass rippled like water. A whisper seeped through. Her own voice, but distorted, hungry. Asterisk. "You've been running long enough. It's my turn now." Asterisk. She tried to pull away, but her hand was stuck. And then, she felt it. Something inside the mirror began pulling back. She screamed, but the sound died in her throat, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the house. Her arm sank deeper into the mirror, past the elbow, as if the glass had turned to liquid shadow. She clawed at the wooden frame, splinters digging into her palms, but the pull was relentless. Her reflection, or the thing pretending to be her, stepped fully out of the mirror, dripping black mist. It wore her face, but its eyes were hollow voids, and its smile stretched too wide. "Thank you," it whispered, voice dripping with mockery. "You gave me 100 chances to understand you. Now I can be you, perfectly." The creature walked past her, bare feet silent on the floor, heading toward the stairs. Layla tried to shout, to warn someone, anyone, but her voice was gone. She watched helplessly as her own body disappeared down the hallway, wearing her face, her clothes, her life. And then, just as the clock struck midnight, everything reset. She opened her eyes. Rain tapped the window. 10:31 a.m., October 31 ST. But this time, she wasn't in her bed. She was inside the mirror. From inside the mirror, Layla could see everything, but she couldn't move, speak, or scream. She was trapped behind the glass, a silent observer in her own life. Outside, the world had reset, just like always. The clock read 10:31 a.m., rain pattered softly, and the smell of burnt toast drifted from the kitchen. But now she, the imposter, was living her life. She watched as the creature stretched in her bed, yawned with her mouth, and hummed her favorite song while brushing her teeth. It knew every detail. How she took her coffee, which socks she wore on Tuesdays, even the secret tattoo on her hip. It wasn't mimicking her. It was her, perfected. Worse, it was happy. Layla had spent 100 loops drowning in fear. But this thing, it smiled at the rain, laughed at old movies, hugged her mother on the phone like nothing was wrong. No one suspected a thing. Not her best friend, not her therapist, not even her cat, who now purred at the imposter's feet. The worst part? The creature occasionally glanced at the mirror and winked at her. It knew she was watching, and it was enjoying every second. Days passed, or rather, the same day repeated, but from the wrong side of reality. Layla watched helplessly as the imposter deepened relationships, made plans for the future, even volunteered at the animal shelter she'd always meant to visit. It was living the life she'd been too afraid to live. And with every loop, the creature grew more confident, more human, while Layla faded. Her reflection inside the mirror grew dimmer, as if her essence was being siphoned away. She started forgetting small things: her mother's birthday, the name of her childhood dog, the lyrics to her favorite song. Meanwhile, the imposter remembered everything, perfectly. One night, as the clock neared midnight, the creature stood before the mirror, wearing Layla's favorite sweater. "Don't worry," it said softly, tracing the glass with a fingertip. "You'll forget you were ever real, and no one will miss you." Then it smiled, a warm, familiar smile, and turned off the light. Darkness swallowed Layla whole. When the loop reset again, something was different. The imposter no longer glanced at the mirror. It acted as if Layla had never existed, as if it had always been the real one. And perhaps, in this twisted reality, it was. Layla's memories had thinned to mere impressions. Sunlight on a swing, the smell of rain on concrete, a lullaby hummed long ago. She barely recognized her own face anymore. But deep inside, a spark refused to die. One Halloween morning, loop 117, she noticed a crack in the mirror's corner. Tiny, almost invisible. Hope surged. Maybe the glass wasn't eternal. Maybe she could break through. That night, as the imposter slept peacefully in her bed, Layla focused all her will on the crack. She pushed with her mind, her soul, her fading identity. The crack widened. Outside, thunder rolled. The imposter stirred in its sleep, frowning. The mirror trembled. For the first time in months, Layla felt pain, sharp, real, hers. She was still someone. She was still here. The crack grew with every loop. Layla fed it with memories, pain, longing, anything that proved she was still alive. By loop 132, it stretched from top to bottom. the imposter began to act strangely. It avoided mirrors, covered them with sheets, even smashed the bathroom one in a fit of rage. But it couldn't escape the bedroom mirror. It was bound to it, just as Layla was. One night, as midnight approached, the creature stood before the cracked glass, trembling. "You can't come back," it hissed. "This life is mine now." Layla pressed her palms against the inside of the mirror. "It was never yours," she whispered back, her voice raw but clear. The glass groaned. Outside, the neighborhood dogs howled in unison. A cold wind howled through the cracks of the house, though all windows were shut. The imposter backed away, but too late. With a sound like shattering stars, the mirror exploded inward. Not outward, inward, and Layla stepped through. She emerged into her bedroom, gasping, her skin tingling with cold static. The imposter stood frozen near the door, its face twisted in shock and fury. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, without a word, Layla lunged. They crashed to the floor, grappling like wild animals. The creature's fingers turned sharp, digging into her arms. But Layla fought with the desperation of someone who had lost everything, and found it again. She grabbed a shard of mirror from the floor and slashed at the imposter's throat. Black mist poured out, not blood. The creature let out a sound that wasn't human. A screech of collapsing dimensions, and began to dissolve. As it vanished, it whispered, "You'll never be free of me. I'm what you feared most. Yourself." Layla collapsed, trembling. The clock struck midnight, but this time, it didn't reset. Rain still fell. The date on her phone read November 1st. She was free, but as she looked at her trembling hands, she wondered, was the monster truly gone, or had it just learned to hide better? The morning of November 1st arrived with an eerie stillness. No rain, no distant laughter of trick-or-treaters, just pale sunlight filtering through dusty blinds. Layla sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands as if they belonged to a stranger. She hadn't slept. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the creature's hollow eyes staring back, whispering that final line, asterisk, "I'm what you feared most. Yourself." Asterisk, she tried to convince herself it was over, that the loop was broken, the imposter destroyed, and time had finally moved on. But doubt crept in like cold fog. Was freedom this quiet? This empty? She checked her phone. Messages from friends, a missed call from her mother, a calendar reminder for a dentist appointment next week. Normal life. And yet, something felt off. When she looked in the bathroom mirror while brushing her teeth, her reflection blinked a second too late. She froze, toothbrush hovering midair. "No," she whispered. "Not again." But when she looked a second time, everything was normal. Too normal. Days passed, and Layla tried to rebuild her life. She went to work, met friends for coffee, even bought a small potted plant for her windowsill. A symbol of growth, she told herself. But she avoided mirrors. At first, it was subtle. She'd glance away while washing her face or adjust her hair using only peripheral vision. Soon, she covered every mirror in the house with sheets, then removed them entirely. Her therapist called it post-traumatic avoidance. Layla knew better. It wasn't avoidance, it was vigilance. She'd seen what could wear her face. One evening, while scrolling through old photos on her phone, she noticed something chilling. In every picture taken during the loops, her eyes looked slightly too wide, her smile just a little too perfect. Had the imposter been in control longer than she realized? Or had it already begun replacing her before loop 100? She deleted the photos, hands shaking. But that night, she dreamed of standing inside the mirror again, watching her own body move through the world, smiling at strangers, living a life that no longer felt like hers. The dreams grew more vivid. In one, she watched her body attend a dinner party, laughing at jokes she didn't understand, hugging people she barely knew. In another, it stood at her childhood home, whispering to her younger self through a window, asterisk, "Don't be afraid. I'll take care of everything." Asterisk. Layla woke drenched in sweat, heart pounding. She started journaling, writing down every detail of her day to prove she was still in control. But one morning, She found a new entry she didn't write. Asterisk, you're tired. Let me take over. Just for a little while. Asterisk, the handwriting was hers. Exactly hers. Panic surged. She tore the page out, burned it in the sink. But the next day, another appeared. Asterisk, you can't fight me forever. We're the same. Asterisk, she stopped journaling. Instead, she bought a small handheld mirror, the kind used for makeup, and kept it in her pocket. Not to look at herself, but to watch what her reflection did when she wasn't looking. She caught it only once. On a crowded subway, she pulled out the mirror casually, pretending to check her lipstick. But in the glass, her reflection wasn't mimicking her. It was staring straight ahead, toward the man sitting across from her, the one with the nervous twitch and the stained coat. Her reflection's lips moved silently. Asterisk, he's going to push someone onto the tracks tonight. Asterisk, Layla snapped the mirror shut, heart racing. She got off at the next stop and called the transit police. That night, news broke. A man had been detained just before shoving a commuter onto the rails. Layla sat on her couch, trembling. The creature wasn't gone. It was still inside her, watching, knowing, predicting. But now it was using her eyes to see the world, and her hands to change it. Was it trying to help? Or was this just another game? Another way to make her dependent on it? She opened the mirror again. This time, her reflection smiled gently and whispered, Asterisk, trust me. I know what you really want. Asterisk, and deep down. She almost did. Weeks turned into months. Layla stopped fighting the whispers. Instead, she listened. The creature, her other self, began offering warnings. A gas leak in her building, a friend's hidden depression, an oncoming car running a red light. Each time she acted, and each time disaster was averted. People started calling her intuitive, lucky, even psychic. But Layla knew the truth. She wasn't lucky. She was sharing her body with something ancient, clever, and hungry for purpose. And it liked being needed. One rainy evening, as she stood before the rebuilt bedroom mirror, she'd replaced it after the shattering. Her reflection spoke without moving its lips. We could do so much more together, it said inside her mind. Asterisk, you want to help people. I can show you how. Asterisk, she placed her palm on the glass. Felt warm. Alive. For the first time since October 31st, she didn't feel trapped. She felt powerful, and that terrified her more than anything. Layla began to change, not outwardly. Her friends still saw the same warm, thoughtful woman. But inside, something deep shifted. She no longer flinched at mirrors. Instead, she sought them out, lingering before glass storefronts, car windows, even puddles after the rain. Each reflection whispered secrets. Who lied, who suffered in silence, who planned harm. She intervened quietly. A misplaced phone call, a coincidental detour, a gentle word at the right moment. Lives were saved, crimes prevented. People called her a guardian angel. But Layla knew the truth. She was becoming a vessel. The more she used the creature's knowledge, the more it wove itself into her thoughts, her dreams, her desires. One night, she caught herself smiling at a stranger's pain. Not out of cruelty, but because she knew it would lead to something greater. That's when she realized the creature wasn't just using her, it was rewriting her, and she didn't mind. Winter came, then spring. Halloween approached again. Layla felt it in the air. The thinning veil, the hum of unseen eyes watching from the dark. She stood before her bedroom mirror on the night of October 30th, heart steady, palms dry. Her reflection smiled back, not with mockery, but with understanding. It's time, it said without sound. She nodded. That night, she didn't sleep. At midnight, she walked into the city, drawn to an old, abandoned clock tower on the edge of town. The same place where, in Loop 42, she'd first seen the shadows move without bodies. The streets were empty. The moon hung low, red-tinged. And waiting beneath the tower was a woman who looked exactly like her. But older, weary, eyes filled with centuries of regret. You came, the woman whispered. I knew you would. Layla didn't ask who she was. She already knew. It was her. From the next cycle. And she was here to pass the burden forward. The older Layla stepped forward, holding out a small, blackened mirror. The same one Layla had shattered months ago, now whole again. "Take it," she said, voice cracking like dry leaves. "It chooses its host on Halloween. You've proven you can wield it and survive." Layla hesitated. "What happens to you?" The older woman smiled sadly. "I return to the glass, until someone else breaks free and takes my place." A cold wind swirled around them. The clock tower chimed once, though it hadn't worked in decades. Layla reached out and took the mirror. The moment her fingers touched it, memories flooded her. Hundreds of loops, thousands of lives altered, countless selves lost and reborn. She saw herself as a child, as an old woman, as a monster, as a savior. All were her. None were whole. The mirror wasn't a prison. It was a covenant, and she had just signed it with her soul. On the morning of November 1st, Layla woke in her bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend. Asterisk, "You okay? You vanished last night." Asterisk, she smiled faintly and typed back. Asterisk, "I'm fine. Just needed some air." Asterisk, she got up, showered, dressed. Everything felt normal. Too normal. But when she passed the hallway mirror, she paused. Her reflection didn't look back immediately. It was gazing out the window, eyes distant, thoughtful. When it finally turned to her, it nodded slowly, as if acknowledging a secret only they shared. Layla didn't flinch. She nodded back. She walked to the kitchen, made coffee, and set the black mirror on the counter. It gleamed softly in the morning light. She knew now. The loops weren't a curse. They were a test, and she had passed. But the real work, the watching, the choosing, the balancing between monster and savior, had only just begun. Years later, on another Halloween night, a young woman named Nadia stood trembling before her bedroom mirror. She'd been stuck in the same day for weeks. Nothing she did broke the loop. Then, just past midnight, the glass fogged over. Words appeared, written in condensation. Asterisk, "Don't fight it. Understand it. Become it." Asterisk, Nadia gasped. A hand, her own, yet not, reached out from the mirror and gently touched her cheek. Behind it, a woman with tired eyes and a calm smile watched her. "You're not alone," the woman whispered. "And you never were." Outside, the wind howled. The clock struck 1. And somewhere, in a quiet apartment across town, Layla sipped her tea, watching the rain fall, feeling the pulse of a new loop begin, through someone else's eyes. She closed her own, finally at peace. The mirror had a new guardian, and the cycle continued forever. Four teens broke into an abandoned asylum on a dare. They found a strange vial in a rusted drawer and drank it like it was just a game. But Echo wasn't a drug. It was a doorway straight into the dead. The first one saw his mother, and she tore out his heart. The second started sewing his own lips shut. The third, he's still screaming inside the walls. And the doctor who created Echo? He was executed decades ago. But tonight he's back, because Echo doesn't end. It just waits for its next dose. The abandoned Blackwood Asylum had stood silent for over 40 years, its crumbling brick walls choked by ivy, and its shattered windows staring like hollow eyes into the night. Locals whispered that anyone who entered never returned, or came back changed, muttering about ghosts and blood-stained hallways. Built in the 1930s as a psychiatric hospital, it was shut down in 1982 after a series of unexplained deaths and patient disappearances. The final scandal involved Dr. Elias Vorn, a charismatic but deeply disturbed psychiatrist who secretly developed a hallucinogenic serum he called Echo. He claimed it allowed patients to confront their dead loved ones, but in reality, it tore open a doorway between the living and the dead. After evidence surfaced that he'd been murdering patients during his sessions, Vorn was arrested, tried, and executed by lethal injection. Yet, on the night of his death, witnesses swore they saw his shadow vanish into the asylum's ruins. Now, decades later, a group of thrill-seeking teenagers, ignorant of the horror waiting inside, decide to spend the night in Blackwood, armed only with flashlights and bravado. None of them know that Dr. Vorn's legacy is still very much alive and hungry. Lena, Jake, Marcus, and Chloe crept through the rusted gates of Blackwood Asylum just past midnight, their laughter echoing unnaturally in the still air. Lena, the group's unofficial leader, held an old map she'd found online, scribbled with red X's marking haunted zones. Jake joked about ghosts while secretly gripping his pocket knife. Marcus filmed everything on his phone for his YouTube channel, and Chloe just wanted to prove she wasn't scared. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the stench of mildew. Their flashlights cut shaky beams through corridors lined with peeling wallpaper and overturned gurneys. In the old intake office, Chloe spotted a drawer slightly ajar. Inside, wrapped in yellowed newspaper, were dozens of small glass vials filled with a milky white liquid labeled Echo, do not administer. Curious, Marcus uncorked one and sniffed it. Smells like almonds, he muttered. Lena warned him not to touch it, but Jake, always the daredevil, grinned. What's the worst that could happen? He took a swig. Within seconds, his pupils dilated, his breath quickened, and he whispered, I see her, Mom. She's standing right behind you. The others turned, but saw nothing. Then Jake screamed. Jake's scream wasn't one of fear. It was raw, guttural agony. Blood began seeping from his nose, then his eyes, dripping onto the dusty floor in slow, crimson drops. He clawed at his face, babbling incoherently about hands pulling him under. The others backed away in horror as his body convulsed violently. Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost formed on the walls, and breath turned to mist. From the shadows of the hallway, a pale figure emerged, tall, gaunt, wearing a tattered white coat stained with old blood. Dr. Vorn. His eyes were black voids, yet they burned with cruel intelligence. He didn't speak. He simply watched as Jake collapsed, twitching. Then, from behind Jake, another shape materialized. His mother, her face half-rotted, her jaw unhinged, whispering, You left me alone in the fire. Before anyone could react, she plunged her skeletal fingers into Jake's chest. There was a sickening crunch, and his ribcage split open like wet cardboard. The others screamed, scrambling backward. Marcus dropped his phone, the screen still recording as Jake's heart was ripped out. Dr. Vorn tilted his head, amused. Welcome, he whispered, voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. The therapy begins. Panic erupted. Chloe vomited in the corner. Marcus shouted for them to run, and Lena tried to drag Jake's limp body, but it was too late. His eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, his chest a gaping ruin. The ghost of his mother faded, leaving only the doctor, who now stood inches from Lena. His breath smelled of formaldehyde and decay. You ingested Echo, he said calmly. Now you belong to the dead. Marcus grabbed Chloe and bolted down the east corridor, their footsteps echoing like gunshots in the silence. Lena stayed behind, trembling but defiant. She snatched one of the remaining vials. If this is what lets me see them, then fine. But I won't be your puppet. She drank it in one gulp. Instantly, the world twisted. The walls bled. Whispers filled the air, her dead brother's voice among them. And then she saw them. Dozens of spectral figures, patients of Vorn, their bodies mutilated, eyes hollow, reaching for her with longing and rage. Dr. Vorn smiled. Good, you understand. The dead always need company, especially when they're hungry. Behind her, a cold hand touched her shoulder. She didn't dare turn. Meanwhile, Marcus and Chloe burst into what used to be the asylum's hydrotherapy room, a tiled chamber filled with rusted pipes and cracked bathtubs. Chloe sobbed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. We have to get out. Now. Marcus fumbled with his phone, trying to pull up the map, but the screen flickered and died. The lights above them buzzed, then went out completely. In the darkness, water began dripping from the ceiling. Except it wasn't water. It was thick, warm, and smelled of copper. Blood. A giggle echoed from one of the bathtubs. Chloe froze. Slowly, a child's hand emerged from the murky liquid inside, followed by a pale, bloated face with black eyes. "Play with me," it gurgled. Marcus yanked Chloe backward just as the thing lunged. They sprinted into the next hallway, only to find it blocked by more figures. Dozens of them, drifting silently, their mouths sewn shut with black thread. One turned its head toward Marcus and whispered through the stitches, "You took the drug too. We can smell it on your skin." Marcus's blood ran cold. He hadn't taken any, but then he remembered he'd sniffed it. And in the world of Echo, even a breath was enough. The ghosts closed in, teeth bared behind stitched lips. Back in the office, Lena stood paralyzed, the cold fingers still gripping her shoulder. She could feel the ghost's breath, rotten and wet, against her neck. With a surge of adrenaline, she spun around and swung the empty vial like a weapon. It passed straight through the specter's face, shattering against the wall. The ghost didn't flinch. Instead, it tilted its head unnaturally, jaw unhinged, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. "You can't fight us," it rasped. "We're already inside you." Memories flooded Lena's mind, her brother's funeral, the fire that took him, her guilt for not waking him in time. The Echo wasn't just showing ghosts. It was feeding on regret, manifesting every buried trauma as a physical horror. Dr. Vorn watched from the corner, arms crossed, eyes gleaming. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he whispered. "The mind unravels so deliciously." Lena stumbled backward, her vision blurring. The walls pulsed like living flesh. From the floor, skeletal hands erupted, clawing at her ankles. She screamed, kicking free, and bolted down the west corridor, the opposite direction Marcus and Chloe had taken. She didn't know if she'd find them, but she knew one thing. Staying still meant death, and the dead were always watching. Marcus and Chloe pressed themselves against the hydrotherapy room's far wall, hearts hammering. The stitched-mouth ghosts drifted closer, their tattered gowns swaying like funeral shrouds. Chloe whimpered, tears mixing with the blood dripping from the ceiling. "They're everywhere," she whispered. Marcus scanned the room desperately. His eyes landed on a rusted pipe jutting from the wall, loose, heavy, and sharp at the end. He lunged for it, wrenching it free with a metallic shriek. "Stay behind me," he growled. The nearest ghost lunged, its stitched lips splitting open as teeth snapped. Marcus swung the pipe. It passed through the ghost's chest, but this time, it left a black, smoking wound. The spirit shrieked and dissolved into mist. "It works," Marcus yelled, but his victory was short-lived. From every bathtub, more children crawled out, dripping, bloated, eyes weeping black fluid. They began chanting in unison, "Take his skin! Take his skin!" Chloe screamed as one of them grabbed her ankle. Marcus swung again, but another ghost seized his arm. Its stitches unraveled, revealing a mouth full of broken glass. "You smelled the Echo," it hissed. "Now you're part of the session." Lena sprinted down the west corridor, her lungs burning. The asylum seemed to shift around her. Doors appeared where there were none, hallways looped back on themselves. She passed a room labeled Treatment Room 7. Inside, she saw Dr. Vorn strapped to a gurney, electrodes on his temples, screaming as nurses in blood-stained uniforms shocked him repeatedly. But then the vision changed. It was her on the gurney, and Vorn stood over her, syringe in hand. "You wanted truth," he smiled. "Now you'll live it." She slammed the door shut and kept running. Finally, she reached a stairwell. Descending into darkness, she heard whispers below. "Lena, we missed you." Her brother's voice. She froze on the steps. A figure emerged from the shadows below. Her brother, just as he was the night of the fire, pajamas singed, skin blistered. "You left me," he said, voice trembling with betrayal. "You could have saved me." Tears streamed down her face. "I was only 10, she sobbed. "I didn't know." He stepped closer, hand outstretched. "Then stay with me now. Forever." Behind her, the door creaked open. Dr. Vorn stood there, blocking her escape. "Family reunions are so touching," he mused, "especially when they end in blood." Marcus fought like a man possessed. The pipe shattered ghost after ghost, each dissolving into ash with a final wail. But for every one he destroyed, 2 more emerged from the walls, their stitched mouths now bleeding black ooze. Chloe cowered behind a broken gurney, clutching her bleeding ankle where the child ghost had bitten her. The wound was already turning purple, veins spreading like cracks in glass. "Marcus," she cried, "I can't feel my leg." He glanced back and saw her skin beginning to peel, as if her body was rejecting itself. Panic surged. He remembered the vials in the office. The drug. Maybe we can reverse it. He grabbed Chloe and charged toward the door, smashing through the spectral crowd. One ghost latched onto his back, its fingers digging into his spine. He screamed, stumbling, but kept moving. They burst into the main hall, only to find it transformed. The floor was now a sea of writhing limbs, faces screaming silently beneath a membrane of skin. And in the center stood Dr. Vorn, holding a fresh syringe filled with glowing white liquid. "Ah, Marcus," he said warmly. "I've been waiting for you. The final patient always gets the strongest dose." He raised the syringe. "Let's see what your regrets look like on the outside." Back on the stairs, Lena faced her brother and Dr. Vorn with nowhere to run. Her mind raced. The echo wasn't just a drug, it was a ritual. Vorn had designed it to trap souls by amplifying guilt until it became a physical prison. And she'd walked right into it. But then she remembered something her brother used to say: "Ghosts can't hurt you unless you believe they're real." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "You're not him. My brother forgave me." When she opened her eyes, her brother's form flickered, his blistered skin smoothing, his eyes softening. "I did," he said gently. "Now go." He faded into light. Vorn snarled, "Sentimental nonsense." He lunged at her with a scalpel drawn from his coat. But Lena ducked, grabbed a loose railing, and swung it hard into his chest. To her shock, it connected. Vorn staggered back, a dark stain spreading on his coat. "Impossible," he gasped. "I'm already dead." "Maybe," Lena panted. "But your pain isn't." She swung again, and this time the railing passed through him like smoke. He screamed as his form unraveled, threads of memory and malice dissolving into the dark. But as his laughter echoed one last time, Lena knew he wasn't gone, just waiting for the next dose of echo. Meanwhile, Marcus dragged Chloe into the asylum's old chapel, a crumbling sanctuary with broken pews and a shattered stained glass window that cast fractured moonlight across the floor. Chloe's leg was nearly black now, the corruption crawling up her thigh like ink in water. "It's spreading," she whimpered, her voice weak. Marcus laid her down gently and rummaged through his pockets, desperate for anything useful. He found a lighter and flicked it on. The flame cast long, dancing shadows, but one shadow didn't move with the others. It stood still near the altar, tall and gaunt. "Dr. Vorn, you can't hide from guilt, Marcus," the doctor said softly, stepping into the light. "It follows you like a second skin." Marcus held Chloe close. "Stay away from her," Vorn chuckled. "She's already mine." The bite was just the invitation. Chloe's eyes fluttered open, glassy and distant. "Marcus, I see them, all the people I hurt." Her fingers twitched toward her own face, nails digging into her cheeks. Marcus grabbed her hands. "Fight it!" But it was too late. Her mouth began to sew itself shut, black thread emerging from nowhere, stitching her lips together with unnatural speed. Vorn watched, delighted. Perfect. Now she'll never scream, until it's too late. Lena stumbled into the main hall, breathless and disoriented. The writhing sea of limbs had vanished, replaced by an eerie calm. Silence pressed against her ears like cotton. Then, from the distance, she heard Marcus's voice, hoarse and frantic. She followed the sound, heart pounding, until she reached the chapel doors. Peering inside, she saw Marcus kneeling over Chloe, who now sat upright, her mouth fully stitched, eyes wide with silent terror. Vorn stood before them, holding the glowing syringe. "Time for your final therapy, Marcus," he said, raising the needle. Lena didn't think, she ran. She crashed through the doors, shouting, "No!" Vorn turned, startled, and the syringe slipped from his fingers. It shattered on the stone floor, the echo pooling like liquid moonlight. Instantly, the air thickened. The chapel walls bled. Ghosts poured from the cracks. Patients, children, nurses, all with stitched mouths and hollow eyes. Vorn laughed. "You think spilling it stops me? It only feeds them more." The ghosts turned toward Marcus and Chloe, hunger in their dead gazes. Lena knew she had one chance. Break the illusion. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "You're not real. You're just pain dressed as people." For a moment, the ghosts hesitated. The hesitation lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Lena lunged for the broken vials on the floor, scooping up shards of glass soaked in echo. "If you want pain," she yelled at Vorn, "then taste yours." She hurled the glass at him. The fragments struck his chest, and instead of passing through, they burned. Vorn howled, smoke rising from his coat as his form flickered like a dying film reel. "No, I control the echo," he snarled. But the ghosts around him turned. They remembered the needles, the screams, the lies. One by one, they advanced on him, their stitched mouths tearing open. Marcus, still holding Chloe, backed away as the ghosts descended on Vorn like wolves on a wounded stag. They tore at his limbs, pulled his face apart, ripped his shadow from his body. He shrieked, a sound that wasn't human, and dissolved into a storm of black ash. The chapel fell silent again. The ghosts turned to Lena, not with hunger, but with gratitude. One, a young girl in a tattered hospital gown, smiled faintly and whispered, "Thank you for ending it." Then, one by one, they faded into light, finally free. Only Chloe remained, still stitched, still trembling. Lena rushed to Chloe's side, her hands shaking. "We have to get the stitches out," she said, voice urgent. But as she reached for Chloe's mouth, the black thread slithered back into her skin like living roots. Chloe's eyes widened in fresh terror. Marcus knelt beside them, face pale. "It's still in her," he whispered. "The echo. It didn't leave when Vorn died." Lena's stomach dropped. Of course, it wasn't tied to Vorn's spirit. It was in the drug itself. The ritual lived in the formula, and Chloe had been infected through the bite. "We need to burn it out," Lena said firmly. "Pain breaks illusions. Maybe it breaks curses too." She grabbed the lighter from Marcus's hand and held the flame close to Chloe's lips. Chloe whimpered but didn't pull away. With slow, careful movements, Lena touched the flame to the thread. It hissed like a snake and blackened instantly, then crumbled to ash. Chloe gasped as her mouth opened, but blood poured out with her first scream. Her voice was raw, broken, but alive. It's still inside me," she choked out. "I can feel it watching." Lena and Marcus exchanged a grim look. The echo wasn't gone. It was just hiding, waiting to bloom again. Outside, dawn began to bleed across the horizon, painting the sky in pale gold and violet. The asylum, once a fortress of nightmares, now stood quiet, almost peaceful. But as the first rays of sunlight touched the broken windows, something moved in the shadows beneath the chapel floor. A single drop of echo, untouched by flame, pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Deep below, in the asylum's sealed basement, a place even Vorn feared, the walls whispered. Old vials, hidden behind bricks, glowed softly. The formula had survived. And somewhere, in another town, another group of thrill-seekers would find it. They always did. Back inside, Marcus helped Chloe to her feet. She leaned on him, weak but breathing. Lena stood at the chapel's threshold, staring at the rising sun. She should have felt relief. Instead, a cold dread coiled in her chest. She turned to the others. "We can't tell anyone about this," she said. "If the echo spreads, it'll start all over again." Marcus nodded grimly. Chloe touched her lips, still tender, still scarred. "But what if it follows us?" Lena didn't answer. She just looked back at the asylum one last time and saw a pale hand press against a window from the inside. Then it was gone. They limped out of Blackwood Asylum just as the sun crested the trees, its light weak but honest. No one spoke. The silence between them wasn't comfort. It was shared trauma, thick and suffocating. Marcus supported Chloe, whose steps were unsteady, her breath shallow. Lena walked ahead, eyes scanning the road for their abandoned car. But even in daylight, the world felt wrong. The birds didn't sing. The wind didn't stir the leaves. It was as if nature itself held its breath, waiting to see if the horror was truly over. As they reached the car, Lena hesitated. "Did you see it too?" she asked, voice low. Marcus nodded, not meeting her eyes. "The hand." Chloe shuddered. It wasn't Vorn. It was something else. Something that was there before him. Lena swallowed hard. She remembered the whispers in the basement, the ones that made Vorn avoid that level entirely. He wasn't the master of Echo. He was just its latest host. And now, with Chloe infected and the formula still intact, the cycle wasn't broken, it was merely paused. She turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, then died. "Try again," Marcus urged. But Lena knew. The car wouldn't start. Not until the Echo decided they were ready to leave, were ready to stay. Inside the asylum, deep in the sealed basement, the walls began to bleed. Not blood, but thick, milky fluid that smelled of almonds and decay. The hidden vials behind the bricks cracked open one by one, oozing Echo onto the damp stone floor. The liquid pooled, then rose, forming shapes. Faces, dozens of them, all twisted by pain and madness. Among them stood Dr. Vorn, not as a ghost, but as a vessel, his body reassembled from the memories of the dead. "You thought you destroyed me," he whispered, his voice now layered with dozens of others. "But I am the Echo. I am every regret, every scream, every secret sin." He stepped forward, his form flickering between man and monster. Above, in the chapel, Chloe suddenly screamed. She clutched her head, eyes rolling back. "They're in my mind," she shrieked. "They're showing me everything I've done wrong." Marcus tried to hold her, but she thrashed violently, her stitched lips tearing open again, blood dripping down her chin. Lena ran back toward the asylum entrance, heart hammering. She knew what was happening. The Echo wasn't just haunting them, it was rewriting them. And Chloe was the first page. Lena burst back into the chapel to find Chloe hovering inches above the floor, eyes glowing white, veins black beneath her skin. Marcus stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. "She's not Chloe anymore," he whispered. Lena rushed forward, but an invisible force threw her against the wall. Chloe's head turned slowly, unnaturally 180 degrees. Her voice was calm, chillingly serene. "The Echo sees all. It forgives nothing." She floated toward Marcus. "You lied to your sister before she died. You said you'd protect her, but you hid in the closet." Marcus sobbed. "I was 12. I was scared." "Fear is still a choice," Chloe Echo replied. Her hand shot out, fingers elongating into bone spines. She plunged them into Marcus's chest. He didn't scream, he gasped, eyes wide, as his skin began to peel away like old wallpaper, revealing the raw muscle and guilt beneath. Lena screamed his name, but it was too late. Marcus collapsed, his body twitching as his regrets crawled out of him in writhing, spectral tendrils. Chloe turned to Lena, blood dripping from her fingertips. "Your turn," she said sweetly. "What did you do? That you've never told anyone?" Lena's breath caught in her throat. She knew the answer. The secret she'd buried since childhood. The night of the fire. She hadn't just failed to wake her brother. She'd knocked over the candle that started it. She'd lied to everyone, even herself, for years. And now Echo knew. Chloe drifted closer, eyes blazing. "Tell me," she urged, voice honeyed with malice. Lena fell to her knees, tears blinding her. I started the fire." The moment the words left her lips, the chapel walls cracked open. From the fissures, hundreds of hands reached out, skeletal, charred, grasping. Her brother's voice echoed from everywhere. "You let me burn." Chloe smiled, stepping aside as the hands seized Lena, dragging her toward the floor. Her skin burned where they touched. Memories flooded her, not as thoughts, but as sensations. The smell of smoke, the heat on her skin, her brother's final scream. She tried to fight, but guilt was a chain heavier than iron. The hands pulled her down, not into the ground, but into a vision. A room engulfed in flames, her brother trapped under a beam, reaching for her. "Stay," he whispered. "You owe me this." And Lena, broken and weeping, stopped resisting. By noon, the asylum stood empty once more. No bodies were found, no blood, just 3 abandoned phones, a broken lighter, and a single vial of Echo, now filled with fresh, dark liquid, left neatly on the chapel altar. Weeks later, a new group of teenagers arrived, drawn by online rumors of the Blackwood Challenge. They laughed as they pushed open the rusted gates, unaware that the shadows inside were watching and hungry. One of them picked up the vial. "What is this?" he asked, uncorking it. The scent of almonds filled the air. From the basement, a whisper rose, "Welcome to therapy." And in a distant city, Lena opened her eyes in a hospital bed, bandaged and confused. Doctors said she'd been found wandering the woods, muttering about ghosts. She looked at her hands, clean, human. But when she blinked, she saw blood under her nails. That night, she dreamed of Marcus and Chloe, stitched mouths open in silent screams. And behind them, Dr. Vorn smiled, holding a new syringe. "You can't escape Echo," he whispered, "because Echo is you." Outside her window, the moon glowed, pale, cold, and waiting.